survive with these numbers until and unless the secondary and the tertiary sectors grow. And the contribution of the primary sector, that the agriculture sector, comes down. That means the growth should take place in such a way that the secondary sector and the tertiary sector continues to grow in a much faster pace than the agriculture sector. Only then we would be in a position to address the challenges that are posed. Only then you would see better growth rates. Only then you would see a situation where you can talk about economic boost. In fact, so much so is the challenge posed by the bifurcation that in fact we have lost out on Hyderabad. Now why is it that Hyderabad is so very important to us? And why is it that we losing Hyderabad has an impact on the state? Every state, for it to progress, you need to have an economic engine. And that economic engine, for decades, to our erstwhile state, was Hyderabad. In fact, to give a perspective, the central government those days used the public sector as the main vehicle to stimulate economic growth. In fact, if we were to see the institutions such as IDPL, NMDC, NFC, IICT, and so forth, they were all set up in Hyderabad. Because of the fact that public sector undertakings, these huge investments, came up in Hyderabad, Hyderabad as an area grew beyond any other place in the state. That is the reason why, but once these kind of institutions come up, then automatically it leads to a transformation, leads to better salaried employees coming out of that location, coming out of that place, which in turn leads to a cyclic effect where better institutions would come up, overall economic growth takes place, and then the city starts moving and growing. Unfortunately for us, it so happened that 90% of the entire PSUs which were allocated to the erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh have all come up only in Hyderabad. And because of that, Hyderabad grew at a much faster pace than any other place in the state. In fact, so much so that the services sector in Telangana, for instance, is now currently positioned at a 62.87%, the tertiary sector, whereas the national average is 55%. And in the tertiary sector, state of Andhra Pradesh, we stand at mere 40%. So the agriculture sector, what should be at 17% as a national average, we are at 35%. The services sector, which is the tertiary sector, which should have actually been at 55%, which is the national average, we are at 40%, whereas Telangana is at 62.87% of the state's GSDP comes from just the services sector, that is the tertiary sector, and predominantly from Hyderabad. So until and unless you have a similar kind of situation also boost the Andhra Pradesh's economy, we will never see the rise of the services sector. It's only the manufacturing sector that is, we are on par with the national average, which is 25%, which is the secondary sector. But there is a huge thrust that should be put in the tertiary sector, which should grow leaps and bounds, which is the services sector. And our dependence on agriculture gradually should come down, per se not meaning to say that the growth should come down. The growth in agriculture sector is per se not much. You do not see the kind of numbers what you see in the services sector. So it's very important for any particular state to grow. It's very important that the secondary sector, that is the services sector, that is the tertiary sector, should grow leaps and bounds. In fact, owing to this reason, the per capita income of Andhra Pradesh, if one were to compare with Telangana, is only 2,19,518. When compared to the figures of those in Telangana, you would see 3,12,398 for the year 2022-23. This is the per capita income. Predominantly it is coming from Hyderabad. The reason why I'm saying this is we would have to have a balanced growth. We would have to harness the strengths that we have. We have a huge coastline of our second largest coastline, in fact, in the country. 974 kilometers of coastline. Now, this is one potential that we need to harness to ensure that we have an economy which is port-led economy, which would support the manufacturing side. While we support the manufacturing side through port-led development, developing our 974-kilometer coastline with various nodes, industrial nodes coming up closer to the ports. While we do so, we also need to strengthen our services sector, developing Visakhapatnam, developing Vizag. It's got to be a mix of both. Only then we would see this kind of growth rate. In fact, to do so, we have, in fact, the state of Andhra Pradesh, before 2019, that is before our regime had come in, the state of Andhra Pradesh had 6 ports in 4 locations. Now, in this 5 years of regime, we're actually in a very advanced stage of constructing 4 more ports. In fact, at a rapid pace, the construction of the ports is going on. In fact, 16,000 and odd crores of investment is going in. We've already incurred more than close to 4,000 crores of this investment. And Ramayapatnam is one particular port where, in fact, my people are saying that going forward next month, you would actually see a ship coming into the port. So much so has been the progress. And similar progress one can also see if one were to visit these ports, be it Ramayapatnam port, which is going at a massive pace, be it the Machilipatnam port, which is also progressing at a very, very brisk pace. So is the progress in Kakinada also. It's a private port though, Kakinada being. And then the Mulapeta port coming up in Srikakulam is also moving at a very, very brisk pace. The 3 of them are coming up in government sector, 1 of them is coming up in the private sector. All 4 are moving in a very, very brisk pace. So what we're currently doing is developing what we had 6 ports earlier in 4 locations. We're developing 4 more. And then we're building 10 fishing harbors to support blue economy. We now currently have every 50 kilometers one travels through the coast. Every 50 kilometers you would either see a fishing harbor which is being constructed or a port which is in existence or one being constructed. So every 50 kilometers per se actually have a booster for the economy currently in the state available. We're also building 6 fish landing centers as well. And then there is a lot of focus on greenfield electronics manufacturing cluster, development of nodes which is taking place. This greenfield electronics manufacturing cluster is coming up at Koparthi and YSR district, and industrial parks in Achutapuram, Orvakallu, and Krishnapatnam. These are all some of the several steps taken by the state government to ensure that development is more balanced across the state. In fact, as I've said, as I've been speaking, such is the proactive nature of the government, and such is the conducive business-friendly environment prevalent in the state, that consistently for the past 3 years, in the category of ease of doing business, the state is rated number 1. This is one major achievement that the state can boast about, trying to showcase that we per se are very friendly to industrialists. Now, having said that, it has attracted almost 13 lakh crores in the Global Investors Summit, which we concluded last year. 352 MOUs were signed, an employment potential of close to 6 lakhs. And at a brisk pace, these MOUs are being translated into reality. In fact, out of 352 MOUs that we have actually signed, in fact, 39% of these MOUs have actually translated into actual commissioning of the plants. So at a brisk pace, these things are happening, and we have also, the economy per se, if one were to look at it, just doesn't come with only the elite or the aloof or the big manufacturing sector alone coming up. It's got to be a mix of everything. In fact, so much so that I would say that the state government has implemented in these 5 years several welfare programs orienting them towards sustainable self-employment. In fact, every scheme of the state government, if one were to notice the schemes, especially the welfare schemes, one would be surprised to see what kind of a transformational bearing these schemes have. To begin with, everything is DBT, direct benefit transfer, where there's no middleman in between, where everything is transparent and there's no corruption there. Now, having said that, every scheme is hand-holding women. So much so that every scheme is translating. Say, for instance, I speak about Cheyuta as one particular scheme. The scheme actually narrates hand-holding women, same particular woman, consistently for 4 years, every year giving 18,750 rupees for the same woman. So in 4 years' time, you actually handhold the same woman, giving every year 18,750 to the same women. While we are doing that, we ensured that there is a bank tie-up also coming into picture. We've also ensured that big companies, starting from Amul to ITC, to Reliance, to Procter & Gamble, to such kind of big companies also partnering with these women in sharing opportunities, in showing them livelihood opportunities. So it's a mix of state government supporting the same women so that these women stand on their feet. Likewise, if one were to see every scheme that the state government has been undertaking in these 5 years, every scheme is a combination of livelihood opportunities, either provided to strengthen the current existing livelihood opportunities or to create new ones. In fact, if one were to actually look at how the employment cycle goes, most of the employment cycle doesn't come from government employment. Government employment per se, before we had come in, probably we had 4 lakh jobs in government sector. And probably our government, being very proactive in actually providing for jobs, could actually create another 2 lakh jobs, which is actually very high. Before we had come in, we had 4 lakhs for decades. And after we had come in, we actually created 50% more jobs in government sector. But that is where it can end. It cannot go beyond that. You're talking about 4 lakhs being to 6 lakhs. Then per se, the big industrialists also, when we were to speak of, if one were to see the translation of opportunities of jobs actually created per se for investment that is actually put in, would probably translate to probably 1 crore of investment translating into one particular job. Not much. Maybe adding to another 2 or 3 lakhs, not beyond that. The major contribution comes from 3 other sectors. One is agriculture, which actually constitutes 62% of the workforce. Now, what we have done is support agriculture, where in fact, best part in agriculture is, the challenging part in agriculture is, even though the fact still remains that 62% of the population depend on agriculture, the fact is 50% of the land holding is less than 1.25 acres, that is half hectare. If one were to translate this land holding into, for calculation's sake, as to up to 1 hectare, if one were to take into consideration, then you're talking about 70% of the land holding is within 1 hectare. We have very small and marginal farmers, and if these small and marginal farmers do not make money, the economy is shattered. What we could actually do is come up with those initiatives to handhold farmers through RBKs, setting up of Raitu Bharosa Kendras, where every village has one, where you have an agricultural graduate sitting in those villages, in those RBKs, where everything from seed to sale of crop is handheld through these RBKs. And with such kind of micromanagement, also incentivizing farmers with production incentives as well, that farming sector could survive. This is one major sector which actually comes to give you a support for the employment. Then the other major sector, which is another sector which actually supports, is MSMEs. MSMEs also, if one were to speak of, talking about industries, mega industries, big industries constitute maybe 3 lakh, 4 lakh jobs. You're talking about MSMEs which actually constitute more than 30 lakh jobs. There per se, the employability rate is more. Every MSME is small, but yet employs more number of people when conversion ratio takes place from investment perspective. But these 30 lakhs, these 3 lakhs, these 4 lakhs, these are not the numbers. Dominantly self-employed sections. Self-employed sections constitute primary, more than 1.5 crore population, which actually should be doing well for the